Hey, I'm Balazs, and in today's video I'll be showing you the 3 craziest Rolex price developments of the past 5 years and answering some questions from our community. I'll start with a short review of the 3 Rolex models, each from a different price category, and then I'll move on to some crazy price data from our marketplace. If you haven't done so already, feel free to support us by subscribing to our channel for more detailed information about watches and the watch industry. So, on to the questions and the 3 craziest Rolex price developments. If you look around at different media sources, you tend to hear the same story over and over. Rolex has good value for money, Rolex is a good investment, but why is this? It is without a doubt one of the most current topics in the world of watches today. Why Rolex specifically? Well, because it has brought the topic of value appreciation to the fore, raising countless questions and inspiring many discussions over the years. Compared to now, Rolex watches were extremely affordable and available back in the day. Inflation obviously affects the price of Rolex collection over time, but even when you consider this, the Submariner no date, for example, has increased in value 6-fold. If we control inflation, $150 Submariner no date in 1957 would be worth a little over $900 nowadays. However, a 2016 Submariner no date costs over $6,300, 6 times higher. Of course, there are many more factors other than inflation that explains increase or decrease in watch prices, for instance, marketing, watchmaking, skills, and development. There are several sources out there that have very interesting information about past Rolex prices. We've gathered some of them and we will go over how prices have developed over time. Later in this video, we'll talk about 3 specific models that have seen pretty amazing price developments in the last 5 years. If you compare prices nowadays to the original list prices back in the day, your eyes might fall out. You can't really compare them though, because annual incomes are so different today. Plus, as mentioned, inflation plays a role. As you know, inflation is the rate at which the general price for goods and services is rising, and of course, that impacts purchasing power. Okay, now let's talk about the 3 models we're focusing on. No surprise here. Or did you expect a different watch? A vintage Rolex Datejust reference 1601 is, without a doubt, one of the most iconic watches of all time. The buzzwords given to this watch are eternal, timeless, classic, and much more. But what has made the Datejust so popular over 70 years? Let's take a quick look at its history. The first Datejust, the reference 4467, debuted in 1945 with a date display on its dial. Released in honor of the brand's 40th anniversary, the watch brought together all that Rolex had accomplished up to that point in a single case. The watch boasted a watertight oyster case, an automatic movement, and an automatic date display. What more could you want, right? This watch has now been on the market for over 70 years and it's currently the best-selling watch on Chrono24. Speaking of sales, Rolex Datejust 1601 sells for around $4,200 on Chrono24. If you look at its price over the last couple of years, you can see that there is a clear increase in value. We're talking about 35% in 5 years, which means that the price went from around $2,700 to over $4,000, and there's no end in sight. All of these prices are taken from our Chrono24 data. We've analyzed some of the most important price developments we've seen based on more than 10,000 transactions every month. This watch was first introduced at, where else, Basel World in 2012. It's a direct successor of the reference 14060 or the 14060M, a favorite among collectors. Rolex produced the earlier model from about 1989 to 2009. Many consider the no-date sub to be the only true Submariner. This is a matter of heated debate. In any case, in typical Rolex fashion, the difference between watches is hard to spot unless you look very closely. That being said, this Submariner has officially taken the collection into the realm of modern watchmaking. Over the decades, this watch has seen plenty of changes and upgrades, but one of the most shocking changes is the price. Many people think that low prices from decades past can be explained by inflation, but in fact, there's a lot more to it than that. Several factors have propelled the Rolex Submariner from a watch that costs a few $100s to a watch that demands much more. Let's look at the Submariner no date with the reference 5513 from 1962. At the time, this watch cost around $200, which is seemingly very affordable. Of course, as mentioned, the incomes back then were very different than they are today. Nevertheless, over time, the Submariner got more and more popular. It was always renowned for its water resistance, but its versatile aesthetics, alongside cameos in some major films like the James Bond series, made this watch more than just a diving tool and turned it into a mainstream status symbol. Prices increased accordingly, and in 1996, nearly 40 years later, the watch cost about $2,800. 24 years after that, so today, it's increased even more to $6,300. If we focus on the period between July 2015 and July 2020, you can see the price increases from $6,400 to $10,100, and that's a rise of more than 50% in 5 years. Rolex first introduced the GMT-Master in 1954. It was originally developed for Pan Am pilots who often traveled between different time zones. The original model bore the reference number 6542, lacked a crown guard, and featured a Bakelite rotating bezel. While GMT Masters were quite affordable around 15 years ago, prices have gone up quite a bit since then. In recent years, it has become increasingly difficult to find a completely original and authentic 1675 GMT, for example, and those you do find come at a price, but we're focusing on a discontinued Rolex GMT-Master II, the reference 16710. This GMT-Master II debuted in 1989 and was actually a second edition of the timepiece, unlike the GMT-Master, wearers could set the hour hand independently of the minute hand on this model. The 16710 was the last GMT-Master to feature the aluminum bezel. Prices for this watch have increased drastically over the last few years. The graph in this video features data from Chrono24's watch collection and shows the timepiece's performance since 2010. When this stainless steel GMT-Master II was first introduced, prices were around $1,600. In 2009, a pre-owned GMT-Master II 16710 typically sold for about $5,200, while a new old stock changed hands for approximately $7,100. If you look at the price period between July 2015 and July 2020, you can see the price increased from $6,300 to $11,900. At the moment, the Rolex GMT-Master II is selling for around $12,500 on Chrono24. Rolex presented 8 new Submariner models this year, including both date and no-date watches made of steel, precious metals, and two-tone combinations. The arrival of the new models also meant saying goodbye to some existing ones, including the popular but polarizing Hulk Submariner and its white gold counterpart, the Smurf. Of course, debates on internet forums and social media platforms began within seconds. When will the new watch be available? Will Rolex increase production numbers to deal with supply shortages? What will happen to the prices of discontinued models? One thing is for sure, you can expect demand and prices to increase, at least in the short term. As always, availability is going to have a big impact here. If availability is better than expected, we might see demand on the secondary market for new and discontinued models weaken slightly. The only possible exception here is the Hawk, which was already in short supply before being discontinued. Again, it's too early to make any concrete predictions. If you have any questions or comments about this topic, let us know below and tell us which models you think will blow up in 2021. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, enjoy your watches. Bye bye.